All right, guys. So, welcome to On the Pitch.
Yep.
Thank you.
You got myself, Arturo Asselta, here with Cardinal Financial, the finest mortgage bank in the world. Here with Nicholas Conti and Jonathan Iago. Nicholas, why don't you give yourself a nice introduction?
How's it going? My name's Nicholas Conti. I'm with Laffey Real Estate. I'm a luxury real estate expert in the North Shore of Nassau and Suffolk County. I specialize in luxury homes and commercial properties across Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk. And that's really it about myself. I grew up in the industry. My parents owned a brokerage. They moved it over to Laffey. And then I've been licensed since I was at the end of my 18th year. When I was turning 19, I got my license and I started off in the industry. And I've been going ever since. That's it.
How old are you now?
24.
Nice. I'm Jonathan Igo. I've been with Laffey for 3 years. Much like Nicholas, I grew up around the industry, not in the industry. My father's a GC, general contractor, so I grew up around homes being built. He transitioned from commercial work. I initially started my real estate journey in commercial, doing triple net investment properties over $1 million. And now I'm on the residential side. Took a break. I'm in residential. Been in it for just coming up on 2 years this past November. So I do anything and everything. I'll do rentals. I'll do sales. I'm trying to break into that luxury market now. Nicholas and I have a few properties in the works. And yeah, that's pretty much it, hopefully do some more deals with Arturo in the future. Hopefully we get, brewing in the luxury space, and that's it. You guys got anything to sell, you know where to find us, right?
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Pleasure for having us.
We're out here. We're dominating the real estate market. Pleasure to have you guys as well. I mean, 3 hosts for one podcast. It's going to be pretty exciting. We're definitely going to be bringing on some, real estate experts as well as non-real estate experts.
Yes.
We're going to get the full spectrum.
Exactly.
Really anything out there. But let's talk about the market a little bit. What you guys are seeing. I'll share some of the stuff on, the lending side on my side, since, both you guys are realtors. You're out there, you're in the trenches, you're getting these listings, you're hosting these open houses, you're seeing the traction. And a lot of people might not know what it's like being a luxury realtor, right? Especially dealing with these multi-million-dollar transactions, these deals. Maybe they don't move as quickly, as maybe those $700,000, $500,000 homes. What are you guys seeing? What's it looking like out there right now in this market?
The market in this upper end is still strong. There's a lot of buyers out there. I mean, you come to an open house at $3, $4, $5 million. You'll get a few people in the door, which is great. It's better than a few years ago. There's a lot more time that these people have now. They know that things aren't flying off the shelf like it was a year or two ago. So you're going to see the big difference there. Houses are sitting longer than usual because the buyers know that they have the time to shop around, look at as many houses as they want, and then circle back and try to make their offer and negotiate the price down. That's what you're seeing. The houses that are selling are the ones that are really priced aggressively at the market value. That big negotiation gap of 4.5 to 3.75 is there, and it's not as successful as it is. You just got to make sure you list it right. We sold a house recently. It was $1 million. The house flew off in 1 week. We had a full asking price offer, and that was just a few months ago, 2 months ago. It's very different than that market that's below 125. The bigger stuff is, of course, going to sit like all times. That's known in the industry that the bigger stuff takes a while because you have to find the right buyer for it, and the price is going to be flexible.
Right. And I feel like, looking for the right buyers is really the word, from what I see, at least, attending these open houses with you. Because when you get into these properties that, are over $1 million, like, for example, this weekend, the one in Beechhurst that's at, 4.7, and there's one in Douglaston that's 4.4, where, the amenities list goes on and on, when it comes to like these type of properties. But the layout, the structure, the type of amenities, and the overall feel for the property. And it really, I believe it comes down to searching for that right buyer. So when you come into
100%.
that stage of, coming closer to, $3, $4, $5 million properties here on Long Island, in Queens, or in the boroughs, how long are you seeing that these properties tend to stick on the market searching for that right buyer?
You got to understand that these houses are usually made for that owner. That's why they're this price. They're the white elephants of the neighborhood. There might be one other house similar to it in that area, so it's not the easiest thing to comp out. So sometimes you're putting it on the market, just trying to test it to see, okay, are we too high? Are we too low? What's the feedback on it? It is about finding the right buyer and figuring out who this house would work for. Because obviously the right buyer for this house is somebody similar to this owner who built this house for his family and for his own needs. So you're looking at longer wait times. It's still about 120 days on the market, which is long for some houses, but if it's priced right, it will go. But finding that right price is always the hardest thing when you're dealing with these white elephants of the neighborhood, because there's nothing to compare it to. Like, I was talking to an agent the other day, and this was on a $1.6 million house. Funny enough that I mentioned the house, and the guy was like, oh, I went on that listing appointment. He was like, I spoke to that owner, and I was like, oh, really? I was like, what did you think of the house? And he was like, well, I couldn't find any comps for it. He was like, I'm thinking it's going to sell 155 to 1.6. He was like, but when I was looking at the comps, there was nothing like it. He was like, it was so hard to find something because it was a custom built home for that family. So it makes it difficult when you're dealing with all these customizations, all these amenities, and these unique houses that aren't custom to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to find. I had a listing once, and the seller said to me, he goes, look, I want $9.8 million for this house. And I said, oh, that's a high price. And he was like, I see it like a piece of art. He was like, I bought this house. When I came to this house many years ago, when I purchased it, I looked at it and I bought it. And I said, I'll give you asking price for it. He was like, so I need somebody who's going to find this house like how I saw it, as a piece of artwork. It's unique. It's magnificent. But that's not how the market sees it. The market sees it as a knockdown that they're going to build for it for land, so it's only worth $6 million, not $9.8 million.
I do a lot of the open houses for Nick when he's got 2 of them going on the same weekend. And what
Or
I've
10
seen
of them like this weekend.
Yeah. And what I've seen in the luxury space is, like you touched upon it twice, is unique. I think that's the word. It's super unique, super, like you said, personalized, and like it's that double-edged sword of like, yes, it's a very unique property, and you're looking for that super unique buyer as well. And I think from what my experience in this luxury field has been is that the buyers are looking for something like they're not going to pull trigger on. Like, you see a lot of people under the $1 million mark, almost like they'll settle for something that might not have, they have a checklist of 5 things, they might go for something that has 3, right? 3 out of 5, they're willing to lose 2 of what they want just to get into a property, right?
Right, the 80-10-10 rule.
Yes. So with this luxury over 2.5, 3 million, they got 10 things on a checklist. They want all 10 things. If no 10 things, they're gonna wait, right? Because they're not in a rush. They're still in a good situation where they are. Before they make that big jump and spend $4 million on a house, they're gonna want everything. So I think the word he touched on, which is great, is super unique. I think they're very unique buyers. I think each individual area and town, as close as they can be, bring about different unique buyers, and they're looking for different aspects. And it could be a 5-mile difference in location, but that could bring a whole different set of uniqueness. So I think that's a good word, is unique.
It's definitely the word, and especially like the property that we went to in Douglaston, I posted a TikTok of, and it's funny to see all the commentary. I posted it and I put on on the title.
I
said
backlash with this.
No, it's cool.
Third party,
but it's cool to see what people say out there.
Peanut gallery.
And I posted
Exactly.
I posted this is what 4.4 million buys you in Douglaston, New York. Right. And you look at the comments, and there are some comments that say, oh my gosh, it's a beautiful home, this and that, and then you have the negative comments. This this home is way overpriced. You're paying for the land, this and that, based on market value. But it goes back to like what Nick said. It's a piece of art, right? And it goes back to being unique, because this property, like you said, it was built by the owner for what he liked.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And what he needed.
And what he needed.
Something to keep in mind when you're dealing with properties like this, it's not necessarily meant to be resold. That's not the intentions going into it. And that's how you create these white elephants of the neighborhood. You're building it for your needs, your family. You might have 5 kids, a mother-in-law who stays with you. So, okay, you need 7 bedrooms, and you need a 10,000 square foot house, but you want to build it in the area that's convenient for you, because you might work 10 minutes away and you might have to take the train into Manhattan and all this other stuff. So that's how these houses get created. Like this house, it's convenient to the city. So if you got to shoot into the city, you hop on the LIRR, you could walk to it, you could get to the highway, you're central to Long Island, you're central to the city, you're central to Queens. So it makes it very easy. And you might not get your money back. It's just a part of it. Like, we sold a house in New Hyde Park a few years ago for $1.375, and this gentleman put a few $1 million into this house. he didn't get his money back.
Yeah.
And he built it for himself and for his family when he was getting ready. And then ultimately he found something else and said, oh, I'm moving to South Carolina.
Yeah.
And he never even moved into the house. He spent 5 years building this house, went through so much trouble, so much heartache, and then he never even stepped foot in it. And it's not about the money for some people.
Exactly.
It's just about getting what they want
Those
because they
temporary
can't
needs.
find it anymore.
Right.
I think you see, I think a great example of that is there's one on the market now. There's one in Old Westbury on the market that's been on the market for quite a while. And it previously traded at just over 6.5 million. I think it was like 6.8, 6.7 and change. Owner came in, bought it for 6.7 from the past owners and put in their own 6 million into it, right? Personalized it, made it almost like you walk in and you think it's an art gallery type thing, right? That specific market, that area, that specific property might not have called for that to be traded at 6.7 million. That might have been his cap, and then they come in and put another 12 million. It's on the market right now for over $12 million, right? And now, like Nicholas said, that seller's trying to recoup that money that they put in, but the market might not call for that, right? You might have done that because it's what you wanted at this time and you saw yourself being here for another 30 years. That buyer now is going to look at the comps. He's not going to look at the property and say, oh, well, you bought it for here and you put 6 million in, so I got to match the 6 you put in and now we're here. They're going to look at the comps and say, you could have put in $200,000 or 15 million. It doesn't change what the rest is selling around.
Right, and that kind of leads me to like my next question, like with the comp, how complex it gets when trying to derive a figure to put on the market for these listings. So like Nick, if you don't mind sharing, like I know you talked about how it kind of gets complicated and obviously through the uniqueness and whatnot. But like, what does that conversation look like, with some of these buyers as far as, hey, I want to list this home for X amount, because maybe they bought the home for $6 million and they put $6 million into it.
Right.
But maybe those $6 million that they put into it doesn't necessarily drive the value.
Exactly.
And I know, like you said, you build these homes for yourself, right? So like that $6 million, he might have did for himself, even though that doesn't really drive the value in the home.
Exactly.
So when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I bought this home for $6 million, I put $6 million into it, I want to sell it for 12.
It's got to be in their head. It's got to be because that's their cost, right?
I'll tell you a funny story one day. One day I get this call from some seller in the Brookvilles. And the gentleman calls me and he says, hey, I got one of your postcards. I wanted to reach out to you to see if you had any buyers for my house. I got this house, X amount square feet. It was built in this year, this many acres. So he goes, look it up. And I say, okay, I look it up. I think he wanted like $14-15 million at the time. So I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at it on paper and I just couldn't make sense of it. And I was like, $15 million. And I sold the house right across the street from it. So I knew the market very well in the area. And I was like, it just doesn't make sense. I was like, where's this guy getting $15 million from? And anyways, we stay in contact. He ends up going on the market with somebody else for $15 million. Doesn't sell, of course. Then he drops it. Then he goes to auction. Then he drops it again. And then it's now sitting, I don't know, it's somewhere around 5 million something. And I was like, all right, this makes sense. Because at the time I said, look, it's a newer house than the house I sold. That makes sense. Same acres, it's a nice property. Probably going to trade in the high 4s, maybe low 5s. And now it's priced accordingly. And I was like, all right, $15 million was just a dream,
Right.
And sometimes that's what it is. All it is a dream.
Now,
these sellers want the numbers, but it just doesn't make sense sometimes.
So was that a guy who's got nothing to lose, right? And he's got his other, obviously
It's a guy who has time. It's
exactly.
a guy who has
Guy's
time
got
and
time,
money.
He's got money and other properties, and he's not in a rush. And is that someone who's
These people don't
playing a game, or is he actually, which is, it's tough dealing with these, high net worth people, right? Because you don't want to look at them and say, I understand what you think, but you're wrong, right? You have to kind of play along, but a $10 million difference in where you're at to where he's at is a big difference. So how do you deal with something like that? Saying, look, I understand, and you don't want to lose their business. You want them to trust you and like you, but at the same time, you do have to do your job and be professional because, like you said,
it's justified sometimes. You have to justify the price. If it's not justified,
exactly.
You're not just wasting your own time.
So how does that convo go?
wasting
if you're
everyone's
talking someone
time.
down off a ledge that they shouldn't be on in the first place. Do you have to teeter the line of not being offensive but being professional? Do you have to tell them straight out, say, look, I understand this, that, and that, but if you look at the market, your numbers are completely off. How does that
you have to look at it in the sense that, okay, where are you getting these numbers from?
Right.
Okay, why is it 15 million? Oh, because I spent 4 million for the land and I spent 6 million to build the house and this and that. And you're like, okay, but it still doesn't make sense. And you got to tell them, like, look, this house sold for this sold for this, and this sold for this. And as close to as, it might not be the same house, but it's as close as it gets, which is going to justify a market value for the house.
Right.
It might hurt you if if they don't like it, if they don't like the number you come up with.
Yes.
But it might also save you the time of wasting your time on listing this completely grossly overpriced house that's never going to sell.
Well, that's like you said, if you took it at 15 million,
and
10
unfortunately
million was cut.
in the market, like I've had experiences where I've put in a lot of work, like from previous agents who've listed the house for grossly overpriced numbers, whether it's 7 million, and then I had to do my work and get them to a price that I felt was right.
Right. Like, it's not just a walk in the park. You get a $2 million house. Oh, that's great. I'm going to make X amount of money when I sell the house.
You have to spend money to make
time.
money.
You have to spend money, and you're commission based. You're not getting a check at the end of the week that you say, okay, 40% of that's going to this. You have to be comfortable, and part of that comfortability is confidence in saying, I know that the property that I'm representing is in the right place in the marketplace itself, right? Because where you're going to attach your name to something that's not going to sell, with that comes the expenses. And not that expenses are a good thing. We're happy to advertise a listing, but if you're going to spend your own money and whatnot for a listing, for a seller to get their property sold, it has to be in the ballpark that you think spending your money's worth it, if that makes sense. I don't want to go throw out a couple $1,000s just to maybe get someone in the door, knowing that their offer is going to be $1 million lower because that's what the market calls for, right? It's that balance of understanding, yes, I do want that listing and I would love that $15 million listing on my resume, but if it's going to cost me $7,000 to advertise for a year, to cut you down from 15 to 9, just for another guy to walk in at zero cost and get it at 8.5 and put in his 3,000 and sell it, then what's the cost to myself, right? Time, it's an expired listing on my resume. The people in the area that I'm doing those postcards to, they're going to check back and they're going to say, oh, wait, well, this one didn't sell. So I see your postcard just listed. Whatever happened with that? Oh, you had it on the market for 450 days and it didn't sell, and now another guy got it and sold it. Why are you going to sell mine, right? Oh, there it's overpriced. Oh, so you're telling me that homeowner's overpriced? Is mine overpriced? It's a tough spot to be in.
It's very complicated. I've seen people stop working jobs.
Yes.
I've seen people finance cars last second. Predominantly, our business in New York State. I mean, you guys are licensed real estate agents. You work, in New York State. Right. I, as a loan officer, I mean, it's easier for me to work in other states. I do carry other licenses in other states, but predominantly my business in New York. Right. And I truly believe New York is the hardest place in the world to do any business whatsoever. Right. You take deals from other states, right? Like Florida, for example. You have to close in 30 days. Yeah. Or you lose your deposit.
Right.
So, it's a lot of pressure on the financing side, right? I mean, at a bank like Cardinal, fortunately, we're able to, do the approval process very quickly. Right. So for us, it's not really an issue. But, coming back to like New York, it's really crazy, right? I mean, in other states, the average closing is 30 days or less. Yeah. Here in New York, you close a loan in 30 days or less. It's like wow. As the lender side, I mean, there's a lot of things, that we're able to do to still close it, at least clear it into a week or 2 weeks. But there's a lot of, factors involved. There's a lot of people at play because it's not just the bank, it's not just the buyer, it's not just the seller, it's the attorneys, the seller's attorney, the buyer's attorneys. And there's so many properties that have violations, this, that, and the other. No COs. I mean, we're able to close loans with no COs. It's really none of our business. But sometimes, it comes down to the attorney, and an attorney's job is really to advise on the situation at hand. And sometimes that could delay a closing to, instead of being able to close, in 45 to 60 days, you might be looking at months down the road.
You think about a lot of other states, right? A lot of other states, the agent writes the contract, right?
Yeah.
Right. So a real estate attorney is not prevalent in a lot of states, right? So a lot of states, the ball's in our court, right?
There are more regulations and requirements.
Even more so, that's why because a lot of people in this, in this market want to rent their place themselves, want to sell their place themselves, want to buy them place themselves, right? Understandable. But at the end of the day, we do have a license and we did pass a course for a specific reason, right? So it's like, we're not, other states, you see agents acting to the maximum of their capabilities by taking on that contract role. Like, I feel like in New York, you have people who kind of almost doubt the reason of why we're here, right? But then you learn to put your trust in us, and we You know, there's a reason we're professionals. There's a reason we go through the course to be licensed, pass a state test and a class test. There is a reason, right? So I just think it's interesting that, you know, there are a lot of third-party factors that delay deals, that may or may not kill deals. Sometimes the time may help, sometimes the time may not help. You know, we have a different responsibility in New York, right?
It's hard for things to be seamless in this industry.
It's hard, but
hard
to have a smooth transaction is always
But
crazy.
the way to go about doing it is, you know, it's funny when realtor, for example, you know, they're recommending a loan officer. You know, you're recommending an attorney, you're recommending a title company. When you're able to have your peers around you on the transaction, from my experience, it makes it way more seamless.
When you know the attorney, when you know the loan officer, when you know all the people who are involved, the communication's there, the transaction's easier. You know, it makes things a lot easier.
I want to take 3 or 4 roofs and make it a warehouse and make it one roof, right? I want to have my team, right? Even though they're, you know, one guy might be here, one guy might be there, you know, a title attorney, this, that, the other, might be in 3 different places, right? But if I know I have my team, right, then we're all kind of under one roof. Different here, different there, different there. But if we're all working together and we've done it before and we trust ourselves in this little system, it does make things a lot
Very
more
rarely, you know, it's seamless like that. Like never. I
had my first deal ever that I closed. I got it a couple months after I started. I knew the guy, so thankfully that made it a bit easier getting the listing. I mean, I did one open house, had probably a 4.5-hour line. It's supposed to be 2 hours, did 5 hours, had 8 offers, all over ask, cash, this, that. I mean, we had everything to choose from. We had a quick closing. We had seamless buyers. Pre-approval was great. They're working with another agent from Doug Selman. Very nice guy. Walk through great. Appraisal great. I remember coming back into the office and our manager, I was like, Pauline, like, if only everything could be a breeze. And then I start getting closer with Nick, and he's like, oh, you know, he's got all the stories because he's a lot more experienced than I am. So he's doing way more volume, right? So we start door knocking. He's like, telling me all the stories, and I'm like, that doesn't add up. Like, I just did one. Dude, you got to meet my guy. I mean, it was great. I'd walk in, I had access to the house whenever, showings, this, that. I was like, it's a walk in the park. Boy, did I learn quick. Did I learn quick.
You had it nice. You had it nice the first round through.
I haven't had anything quartered that since, you know? But
no,
it's part of why we do it. It's why we're here too, right? That's my job. My job is to take on all that.
Yeah.
And I love to do it. I love to be the guy to sort it out because I know if I'm sorting it out, it's going to get done right? And that's why, you know, that's part of the reason I do what I do. And
like we had a Hail Mary save on one deal. It was an investment property over in Ridgewood. And we tried to get in for the appraisal. The appraiser would not. I forgot what bank it was working with. And we tried to get in for the appraisal. We got through the whole building, and there was one room that was a cutoff from the apartment, the top floor apartment. And we talked to the family member. The family member said, oh, my son is going to be there. He'll let you in. He's sleeping. He works nights. So he's probably sleeping. Just knock on the door and he'll let you in. So we knock on the door. It's me, the appraiser, the buyer. And we're knocking on the door. He doesn't answer. We knock again. He starts cursing at us. He goes, get the F out of here. Why the F are you knocking on the door? And we're like, oh, your mom told us that you'll let us in just to look at it quickly. It'll be 5 seconds. And he goes, I'm not letting any of you effers in. He goes, get the F out of here. So anyways, we weren't able to complete the appraisal. And this is like the tail end of COVID. So the appraiser needed to see that room. He refused to finish this appraisal unless seeing that one room that's probably 200 square feet. Yeah. And ultimately, one night, I was sleeping. So the buyer lived 1 block away from the building. And then they had a super at this building. And then the seller was a big investor, so he never went to the building that often. He had a management company handling it. So one day, I'm sleeping. It's like 10:30 at night. And my phone starts going off, but I'm asleep, so I don't see it. And I wake up, and I got a few missed calls, few texts. I was like, what the hell's going on? And we were supposed to close this day. And ultimately what happened was the super went to the building. The appraiser said, hey, can you get us in? And called the buyer. And the buyer said, okay, let me call the super. So he called the super. It's like 9:30 at night. So they go over there at 10. And they get into the building at like 10:30 at night. 10:30 at night, an appraiser is working. And he gets in there, sees it, and we close the next morning
Wow.
at 9:30. And then, but wait, here's the twist. As good as that was, so the buyers ended up not having all the checks they needed.
Oh my God.
So that closing ended up lasting like 6 hours.
Yeah.
And they were about 4 hours late, running to 4 different banks to get the checks for the closing.
Wow.
It was crazy, but it was literally a Hail Mary
Right.
to get that deal. Because if they weren't closing, the commitment was going to end.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you have a team around you, right, that you use when you use, your preferred loan officer, your
Right.
attorney, title, like those are the lengths that we go to. And that's the reason why you work with a team like
Exactly.
that, because you're able to make those moves happen.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If I need an appraiser to go out there tomorrow, like the appraiser's going out there tomorrow.
Yes.
You know, and
Right.
like I've gone above and beyond to the point where like I had a client, in the Bronx that had a, real big tenant issue, and they were refinancing. They were Airbnb in their property. They learned a lot from like, being, renting it out and whatnot, the mistakes that they made, which led them to this happening with tenants that weren't leaving.
Yeah.
So the Airbnb rule is if you let anybody stay for longer than 2 weeks, at least in New York, those become long-term tenants.
Right.
Which then, holds them plausible to, the tenant laws in New York State. And
Yeah.
everybody knows in New York State, it's a disaster when it comes to getting rid of tenants.
Yes.
So, I was able to work with the appraiser and, we got the police involved and we were able to figure out and like set up a timeline for, the appraisal to be able to get in there, get the
Right.
appraisal done. So we were able to get their refinance done. It was a nightmare, but, those are the steps that we take. There are a lot of banks that, they run into a wall and they're like, sorry, rip up the paper and, on to the next.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well,
So-
that's why, like you said, if I'm, if we're gonna work with you, we're gonna know that you're gonna do exactly what I do for my client in my space. My space
Exactly.
is different, right? I'm gonna go show a house at this time. If I call you and I go, it might be 8 o'clock at night. I need this done by the morning. I know you're gonna go up and do it. I had a rental client, and I went away to the Dominican Republic, and we were in the middle of looking for a house. We maybe seen 8 in like a 3-day span. Like I was just getting them in and out. They needed to go. They needed to be in a specific school district. We're already in the district, They need to be there. Went away. I came home, landed at like 4 something on a Sunday. Went straight from the airport, dropped my buddies off straight to a showing. That rental house that we showed that night was the one 2 days later they put a rental application in. Application offered, accepted, signed, closed that the next Sunday night. So I came back from a flight, showed the house, whatever, all to that. The next Sunday, all day they're doing the thing, do the final walkthrough. Is this going to work? Is the construction going to be done? It was under renovations. And that Sunday night, like 9 o'clock, we signed the lease. I walked in Monday morning with the check. And I'm like, I know that when I give it to an attorney, when I give it to you, when I give it to anyone else, an appraiser, I know that they're going to go through those exact lengths that I went through
Right.
to get this deal done. And that's what I mean when I take three roofs, make it a warehouse, and put it under one roof.
100%.
Right?
And like I have so many stories of being on vacation, and I don't even go that often.
You can't go that often.
Everything
You
hits
go.
the fan as soon as you go.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
Like I had a buyer of mine who I love, and they came out of nowhere. Like they weren't looking for a house for a little while because of COVID. And he calls me and he was like, hey, I want to go see some houses again. So I sent him a few houses while I'm on vacation. And he goes, oh, I really like this one. And I was like, this is it. I knew that was the house for them.
Yeah.
So I called up like people in my office. I was like, hey, could you show them this house? I need you to show them this house. This is going to be the house. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
this is going to be the house that they're going to buy. And ultimately it was the house they ended up buying. So like the second they set the appointments, I landed that night at like 4 a.m.
Jeez.
And I got up like whatever, I think it was like 9:30 we started showing. We looked
Yeah.
at like 5 different houses, and we looked at that one house, and I was like, man, when I told them to set the appointment, I was like, I knew that was
knew,
going to
you
be the
had that
house you
gut
were going to
feeling.
buy.
Yeah.
100%.
And ultimately it ended up being that house. But everything's crazy when you're about to go on vacation.
Nothing
Everything's
stops.
crazy.
I signed my first listing. I had a trip planned to Florida, a golf trip planned like for months and months and months. And this is before I started working as an agent. I sign up, I start working with Laffy like end of November. Signed this listing beginning of January. It just happens to be like I signed it on like a Tuesday. That Saturday or that Thursday I was going away, and we were gonna do the open houses. So the first weekend I couldn't do open houses. I had agents calling me left and right from 7:30 in the morning.
As soon as you land.
Till
It's
8
as
at
soon as
night,
you land.
right? Because it was a good listing in Glen, had a beautiful price. And my buddies were like, what's going on? Every second, I gotta take this. I'm like, what's going on? You know, I had agents calling me, oh, you can't show, when can you show? All right, not till Monday. Oh, well, that's after 3 days. I'm gonna, you know, you have to show in 3 days or it's gotta be temporarily off market. I'm a new agent. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, I just signed this thing. I don't know, I'll show when I get back. I'll do the open house when I figure out what day I'm doing the open house. I'm like, call my manager. I'm like, they're talking about taking it off market, but like, am I gonna get it taken off? She's like, take a chill pill. Like, enjoy your vacation. Don't answer the calls.
Yeah.
If they want to buy the house, they'll be there Monday.
Right.
Get back the next week, show it, sell it. I'm like, you know, it doesn't stop. It's 7:30 a.m. to 9 at night. I mean, we sat down with this potential. We're doing an off-market deal right now, trying to get it onto the market. We sat down for what, 2 hours? The other weekend,
Yeah,
right?
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, just, you know,
Yeah.
going through the motions, having the conversation, listening, smiling, agreeing. You know, in a sense, we got nowhere with that, but you have to go through those things.
You gotta go
you
through the
Nick's
motions.
dropping
It's about
off.
building the relationship.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it's about.
And he's
Building
like-
rapport, building the relationship.
And he's like, look, you know, keep it going. Give him a call tomorrow. I was like, oh, don't worry. He'll call me soon. Probably 30 minutes after that, he calls me. I have another 40-minute phone call.
Yeah.
2 hours later that night, another 30-minute phone call.
But yeah,
It doesn't, you know,
it's
doesn't
it's
stop.
going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of going through the motions, should we get on the pitch or what?
Let's get on the pitch. I mean, I'm
Sure.
ready, man.
Yeah?
I'm ready.
Let's get on the pitch,
Let's take
boys.
it on the pitch.
Let's take it on the pitch.
All right, gentlemen.
Come on, guys.
Let's go.
Let's go. All right, so we're back on the pitch. We're gonna go through it. We have here branch manager Michael Giancola here on the Cardinal team representing. So we're gonna play a foursome. We're gonna be going through 9 holes together. So Mike, why don't you take us off on the pitch real quick?
This is a lot of pressure. We also got Nick and Johnny from Laffey Real Estate. They're based out of Manhasset. Great agents, do a ton of business, so hopefully I can hit the ball decently far.
There you go.
See what happens. If not, I'm blaming it on the simulator, Carlos.
There's always the same.
It's always a sim.
I might go.
All right, that's f***ing dead straight. What's up, Carlos?
I think I
Here on the pitch. It's not quiet on the pitch. So let's take up where we left off, right? We were talking about going through the motions
Yes,
as far
we
as
were.
what it takes, you know, getting these deals, you know, getting in front of these buyers or sellers, listings, whatever it may be. So Johnny, I don't want you to be quiet while I'm swinging. Why don't you take us through, you know, a little bit of what you do as far as going through the motions, how you kind of, when you start with door knocking and you meet that first, you know,
Yeah.
prospect listing.
Well, look,
Take it away.
so last summer, about probably last June or July in Glen Cove. We do a lot of door knocking in Glen Cove. You know, at this point, we've probably hit legitimately almost every singular block in Glen Cove, if not twice. And we met this couple that was moving to South Africa. We have followed up probably once every 2 months just on our route. We probably door knocked that, Nick? 8, 9 times.
And you said something
Get that shot, by the way. Hold on.
About mine before? This kid shit on my shot before. Right on the pitch. I absolutely shit on my shot.
We're never gonna get through that.
No, we door knock, you know, you keep going back, you know, after the 3rd or 4th time, you start bringing paperwork just to be ready. They kept giving us
brutal.
Next month.
brutal. Johnny and Mike are gonna carry this.
But yeah, that's, you know, it's a lot of follow-up, it's a lot of that gritty follow-up work, but it pays off. You know, Nick, we visited there 8, 9 times before we actually got in the house. Then we sat down maybe once, twice in the house before we, you know, got the listing, so.
Now that's a swing.
Wow.
That's a swing.
And you get that listing.
Easily.
Mainly, like, where are you door knocking?
Glen Cove.
Yep. It's the most receptive area by far, you know.
Good.
Yeah, it's by far the most receptive area.
Glen Cove or Glen Head.
Yeah,
Glen Cove or Glen Head.
yeah. So we have a few leads we can follow up in Glen Head, but Glen Cove's been a money area.
Direct deals from the door knocking, or do you feel like you're mainly like creating relationships, like that type? Like,
See, actually, what I
It's a mix of both.
think with the door knocking, what I think is a misunderstood concept is that you think you'll form relationships, right? At the end of the day, you're just like any other person who's come to their doorstep. If they're not interested, they will not be interested.
Right.
they'll be a little more receptive than a phone call. If I cold call them, they'll hang up on me.
They can't just, what are they going to, they
Exactly.
have the door in
Well,
their face, but-
we've had that, you know, by all means, we've had that.
Was my head blocking that, or did you get that?
I might surrender to caddying for the rest of this game.
You might-
I think I go again.
You're gonna go again, yeah.
But, you know, if we didn't follow up, no joke, 8 times with that Glen Cove seller, like, I don't think we get that listing.
Right.
I think they go to the first person who calls them or whatnot, but we had seen interest, we followed up
Pretty good.
week after week. There it is already.
So why do you feel like most realtors don't do enough? Like, I don't see a lot of.
You want to know what the honest truth is?
They don't want to work.
Yep.
Is this me?
They want the listings to fall into their lap.
That's you.
Look, at the end of the day with the commission job, it's something that I had to learn too in the beginning too, right? Because I made my first sale rather quick in the industry. And I was like, okay, I have leeway, right? But when you take time off, it's like that thing, like when you're in a good workout routine, you take 2 weeks off, you set yourself 2 months behind. If you're not going every single day for networking, for connections, for potential sellers, and if you're not hammering those sellers week after week after week, you're going to lose it.
Right.
We're in such a saturated market, especially in the area we live in, especially, you know, Nassau County. Well, that was like my biggest thing is I worked with and you know, they always say family's the worst to work with.
I mean, it wasn't.
But I worked with my cousin and his fiance, and we might have saw 30 houses, and they were pre-approved at like 600.
Well, the other thing is like,
Yeah.
you know, Arturo can attest to this too. It's like, it's explaining to a borrower like, in this type of market, okay, you're putting 20% down.
Right.
You're at 600. To get the deal, we need to go to 620.
Right.
Over ask by
Yes.
20 or 30 grand.
Yes.
And sometimes it's making the borrowers understand that, you know, $20,000-$30,000 on your mortgage
Right.
does not mean you're paying $20,000. Right.
Absolutely, it's monthly.
It may be $100, $150 in your monthly payment.
Yes,
You know,
exactly. If that, yeah.
The rates are
$40.
Yeah.
Can't even fill up your car.
And, exactly. And at a time like now, I don't know, you guys have a little more insight on the rates. What are we at? Low 6s if you want a primary residence?
Yeah,
6.4?
6s right now.
6.
They kept giving interest, working for connections.
Oh,
You got these leads that are team hot.
It's like, if you
This kid's shit on my shop before. Why don't Right, so it's like we say in this industry,
one shot.
like prospecting now in March, right?
Worth $500 million, walking to $1 million.
I wasn't sure, brother. Nick, baby. Let's go.
I know.
On top of that, so they have multiple realtors calling them, multiple lenders
Yeah.
for the other.
It's challenging, you know?
Get there. It's just not the distance.
Thank you all for tuning in to On the Pitch with your hosts Artie, Jonathan, and Nick. We got a special guest, Mike Giancola, who came on the pitch with us to shoot a couple holes of golf. Definitely stay tuned in. We're going to have a lot of exciting stuff, a lot of, like I said, real estate professionals, non-real estate professionals, giving you guys everything as far as information in the market, anything that's going on. So stay tuned in. A lot of crazy stuff to come ahead. And I'll take it away on the last hit with you guys. So hopefully I'll hit it straight. If I don't hit it straight now, we'll get it tuned up for the next ones.
Or we're gonna
Thank
edit
you
it
again.
out.
Or we're going to edit it out.
That's great. The service road, like heading towards Great Neck, if you were past Searingtown Road,
We did an outing there. That's a great course.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's good.
That's a good shot, right?
Shot of the day.
There it is,
That finish.
straight away.
You look like Tiger there.
Quiet on the pitch.